This is D.S. Yoxheimer, and this is another edition of The Spectre, and I'm going to be basically talking about the Star Trek films. This first segment is going to be, of course, about Star Trek Generations. Yeah. The movie Generations starts off with an elderly Captain James T. Kirk, Scotty, and Chekhov. That was the only three they could get together for this. Seeing off the maiden voyage of the Enterprise B, which is unfortunately being helmed by this guy. So yeah, Alan Ruck, actor Alan Ruck, who played Cameron Fry from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That's why I immediately recognized him when I first saw this film all those many years ago. He, not very dissimilar to Cameron Fry, as you can see. You know, I almost waited for him, or wanted him to say something like, you know, Starfleet Command pushes me around, you know, like that kind of thing. He was very reluctant to take the new Enterprise into this energy ribbon because, you know, they didn't have all the stuff installed or anything like that. But and it did make it. The scene just was, you know, was for the purposes of, you know, putting this character Captain Kirk into the Next Generation movie, basically. So he, Captain Kirk, has to go down to the engineering section to fix this whatever inertial dampener or whatever they need to break free of the ribbon after beaming the people off to get them away from, you know, off the ships. And they only got like, I don't know, like 44 of them out of 180 or something. I don't know. I don't remember the exact. I've watched these movies a number of times, so I mean, and I know them backwards and forwards, but little details elude me. So Scotty beams them on, because he's apparently the only one who knows how to use a transporter. Nobody on the ship knows what the fuck they're doing whatsoever. It's just really this. So Captain Kirk is one of the people. The ship gets hit. Little part of the second hull, if you're familiar with Star Trek ships, basically, gets blown away and, you know, taken out by the energy ribbon, and Captain Kirk is presumed dead. So, flash forward to about, 80 years later, and it's 2371, and Worf is being promoted to Lieutenant Commander, which seems like a long time to be, after all those years on the show. I didn't know what his rank was before that. So they're in a holodeck, the whole crew's on a holodeck program where they're on this really, it almost looks like some kind of nautical themed musical rather than they're on an actual sailing ship of that era. But anyway, everything looks so clean and nice, and they got these nice little uniforms on. But what would they know about, the 1500s? So anyway, they do this whole ceremony, and he was trying to reach for a hat while he was on the plank above the water, and they removed the plank, and Worf fell in the water. And then Data's asking Geordi something, one of his queries about human behavior. I just don't get humor, Data. And so Data pushes Dr. Crusher into the water for no damn reason, but it's hologram water. Meanwhile, of course, if you're familiar with this film, Captain Picard gets him, an urgent message while in the holodeck, and just goes, takes off. And of course, the empath, Deanna Troi, is the only one who picks up on it. No one can pick up on the fact that the captain seems very troubled and, briskly took off quick and, seemed upset. Doesn't make any sense. So, anyway, this is how this movie goes on, basically. It's like, you can tell where it's going. Heroes win, villains lose. It's not interesting at all. So, It's like one of those real goody two-shoe episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation, but still not. Even if this was like a TV movie quality, it's not even good for TV movie quality for back in the day. Like, so just to get, that's my assessment of it. So anyway, so because of this thing where Data doesn't, Data pushes Dr. Crusher into the water to be funny, she's pissed, and everybody's mad at him, which doesn't make sense because what the fuck else were you supposed to think? Because from his perspective, he doesn't get that the joke has already been done, and it's not funny when you do the same funny thing right after someone else does that funny thing. So he should have done something else funny or unexpected, like he should have took an android shit right there on the deck or something. I don't know. I know that's disgusting, but I was just trying to come up with something to maybe not that. So anyway, yeah, they decide to install Data's emotion chip, and wackiness ensues. So, basically getting to thick the plot, enter Dr. Tolian Soren, who's played by, motherfucking Malcolm McDowell. Cool. Great casting for a villain. Depends on what you put him in. It's amazing how many times I've seen him like wasted in films and stuff like that. This is a bigger, higher end film. It's Star Trek franchise. It's pretty big, and he's the only thing kind of saving this movie. He's evil. He's cool. I'd like to see what he does. I would like it if maybe he popped up again or something like that and just didn't get killed off, and he had a much bigger plan other than just entering the Nexus. But that's all it is. That's all this is. The MacGuffin of this movie, if you want to, like the Hitchcockian MacGuffin, is the Nexus. That's it. Who gives a fuck? He's just gonna get to this place, and that's it. And he's getting these two the Klingons, promising them this weapon that if they build it and all that they're promising them this weapon, but he's really just using the weapon to blow up the sun when the energy ribbon comes again, because that'll direct it towards the solar system that he's going to be in, where he's going to be on a planet, and he'll get devoured by it or sucked into it. Basically, it's a portal of sorts. I don't know. It's that the Nexus thing is fucking stupid too, because it just is. So while all this is going on, while the Enterprise is in a battle with they're being pursued by the Klingons. They're trying to figure what they're doing. They're cloaked, but they're in an old Romulan an old Klingon warbird. I'm getting my villain ships mixed up, my enemy ships mixed up. So they're in that, and they're just around this planet, just hanging, just waiting them out at this point. So in the meantime, down on the planet, Captain Picard is through. Well, here's what happened earlier after Data got fucking emotions. He lost his shit. He was on a space station where they had to leave soon because the sun was going to supernova, and he was with Geordi. So Dr. Soren showed up. He had a dampening field set up around the space station so their communications and their transporters wouldn't work. So he was able to escape with Geordi to the Klingon warbird, while Data, was panicking and freaked out because of his emotion chip, because it overloaded his positronic brain. Happens, what are you gonna do? So Riker and the rest of the crew find Data later. Shit happens, and Data's having issues with his emotion chip, and that's part of the plot of this thing a little bit. So to get Geordi back, they go through an exchange, hostage exchange, and basically they let Geordi back in, but they fixed Geordi's visor to basically be a little mini camera, which is, wow, what fucking 24th century technology that we have now. Little mini cameras. We have cameras so tiny now, and it's 2020. What do they mean? They probably have cameras that are the size of a freaking cell at that point. But anyway, so they program it to basically take video of, you know, so they can get the shield harmonics, or what do they call them, shield frequency of the Enterprise, so they can calibrate their weapons to penetrate it and, you know, basically kill them, blow the chip up. But meantime, Captain Picard is dealing with Dr. Soren. So, Dr. Soren's got this sort of, you know, missile launch set up on the planet, and while this has happened, the Enterprise was hit by the Klingon warbird before they figured a way to kind of uncloak them, hit them with a torpedo that revealed them, so they could just, you know, launch other weapons at them. But right after that happened, the warp core and everything started going on the Enterprise, so they separated the saucer from the second. If you are aware of Star Trek The Next Generation, the Enterprise D can separate from the saucer section to the lower hull, and that's where the warp core is. So they separated, but the explosion from the other half of the Enterprise basically caused the saucer section to lose its trajectory, you know, and start to hurtle towards the planet. And that's basically how they, I think they actually wanted to, change the Enterprise for the movies, probably. Well, actually they did, and the old model, they were still using the model from the TV series, which was 6 feet long and very wide. They kind of wanted to get something more manageable to shoot and to move around, so, because they were still pretty much, you know, using models at that point. But anyway, that's just some minor insider tidbit. So they basically, they total the Enterprise on this planet. So the Enterprise sort of glides into this, you know, into these just massive wooded area. I was kind of curious though if it actually hit the water, what would have happened? Would it have floated? Would it have sank? I don't know. But so anyway, probably would have been a much bigger problem if it would have hit the ocean. It would have skipped like a stone. That would have been a pretty violent crash. So anyway, most people survived. And that's what they indicated. Not that it's that important. None of this part of the story is important. What's important basically is Soren and what he's doing. His selfish fucking greed. Well, what happened was his family was killed a long time ago, and that's why he wants to go to the Nexus so he can experience all these things. Meanwhile, just that I didn't mention before about Picard and the awful news he got earlier was that his brother and his nephew had been killed in a fire. And he breaks down in front of Counselor Troi, and that's what that's about. So he has something in common. So that just basically gave him something that he could identify with the villain and try to talk to him, because that's one of the core sort of principles or plot devices in Star Trek is sort of when the captain or a main character can identify with a villain by having experienced the same trauma or whatever. So this is kind of what's going on here. And so anyway, he tries to, of course, talk to Soren. That's not going to happen. This dude's obsessed. I mean, he's been doing this for a long time. And part of who helps, basically school Picard on the Nexus was a convenient character, Guinan, who's played by Whoopi Goldberg. Anyone who's watched Star Trek The Next Generation knows you'll eventually run into Whoopi at 10 Forward, which I think is the bar up front, in the front of the Enterprise. And so that's basically what she just said. She left the Nexus. Somehow this place is like inescapable, and it's just like, and the thing of it is that if it is so great, then just fucking stay. I mean, it's the weird thing about this whole movie is it's like you're basically saving these people from heaven. They're like in the beginning of the movie, it's like, oh, we got to get those people out of the energy ribbon. Of course they didn't know, but now that this place is fucking great. And anyway, I think part of it is just basically he was going to cause so much destruction to get back to it. Even though he could have used a ship to get to it, perhaps, like they did in the beginning of the movie. Because that's what happened. They were in ships. They just flew there in space. They didn't have to kill anybody else. They were their own little weird cult, whatever it is, Heaven's Gate. But they were only killing themselves. That's not a problem. Problem is when you kill a bunch of other people who aren't in on the shit. So I guess that's how I view it. So anyway, getting back to the thick of the plot, Guinan eventually guides Captain Picard when he winds up in the Nexus the first time. When Soren succeeds, Guinan says, "Oh, well, you can find Captain Kirk. He just got here as far as because time doesn't mean anything in the Nexus. So he's chopping wood at his rustic home. Who the fuck knows where? It looks like it looks like a set of The Outdoors. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem like a place where they're really in the outdoors. It just, because it was probably just a set. But anyway, he had a dog. He had a big dog, and he was going to meet with this woman, Antonia. And then after some convincing, Picard basically said, "Nah, this shit ain't real." And to Captain Kirk, and then he's like, "Yeah, you're right. This doesn't feel right." So he just with very little having to do very little convincing, he leaves this place to go off, to his peril. And all they have to do is just ride off, and then there's some light, and they just go through a portal, and they're right there back there on the planet, and they just travel back in time very easily. And that's the other thing I don't like about this film is everything is done so easily. They can just go from here to there and seemingly do everything without any real challenge. On so many levels, it's like probably the worst Star Trek movie. I think it is. No, and I didn't even think this before I started doing this tonight. Doing this whole, I think it's the worst. I think it's damn near if it isn't. It's probably a close second to whatever is the worst Star Trek movie. And I'd have to just think about it for a moment to ascertain what that is. But so the second time him and Kirk go back, and they succeed in stopping Soren. And Picard locks the missile clamps while Captain Kirk got a hold of some remote that I think whatever. I think it locked the missile clamps or something. Whatever, the remote did something to basically stop Soren's plan, and Captain Kirk fell down a side of the mountain in the bridge that broke loose. Basically, he got trapped under that. Picard went down, somehow dragged his body up a hill, up the mountain, and then buried it under a bunch of rocks, and then put his his Starfleet metal badge thing on top of it. And that's what happened. That's how Captain Kirk died. And fans hated it. And rightfully so. It's like why even bother, having a movie with Picard in it? I mean, with Captain Kirk in it for the Generations movies. Unless they could do, make it cool, and they fucking failed epically at that. Star Trek Generations was just an epic fail in every way imaginable. It was terrible, I think most Trekkies. I mean, I don't know how I haven't really looked up how it's aged with time, because I just watched it recently, and it's pretty terrible. There's no getting around it. There's just no, everything is surrounded by the villain, and the villain's motivation is just like it's so selfish. I mean, not that villains aren't usually selfish and narcissistic and all of that, but I didn't care about what he was doing. You didn't even see the family, or they didn't even go back to when they died, so it had some emotional impact as to why he was doing it. It was just sort of this, you know, kind of lone crazy person who was a mad scientist, and he was going to blow up a sun so he could get into a nether realm where, you know, all his there where he can basically restore his life the way it was before his family got killed. And the plot was kind of, would Picard do the same thing? And he just kind of realized, oh, none of this is real, and he just, I don't know. But anyway, that is my assessment of Star Trek Generations, and I guess yeah, now would be to move on to First Contact.